First light. The starship horizon drifted silently through the nebula's violet haze, its navigation system struggling against the electromagnetic interference. Inside, Elian Reed pressed his forehead against the viewport, watching as particles of stardust scattered like fireflies against the shield barrier. "Proximity alert," the ship's AI announced. "Unregistered structure detected." Elian straightened, fatigue momentarily forgotten. "Show me." A holographic display flickered to life, revealing a small orbital platform barely visible against the nebula's backdrop. According to all Earth Alliance records, this sector should be uninhabited. Yet there it was, a structure clearly artificial in origin. "Scan for life signs," Elian commanded, already reaching for his expedition pack. One faint biological signature detected. "Species unknown." Curiosity overcame caution. After docking, Elian stepped onto the station with his hand hovering near his pulse pistol. The air tasted metallic and thin but breathable. Following the scanner's guidance, he moved deeper into the abandoned outpost, past consoles covered in a language his translator couldn't decipher. The life sign led him to a small chamber that might once have been a research lab. Curled in the corner was a small figure with delicate features and skin the color of twilight, purple with subtle patterns that seemed to shift like constellations. A child, unmistakably, though not of any species documented in the Alliance database. When she saw him, she pressed herself further into the corner, eyes wide with fear. "I won't hurt you," Elian said softly, kneeling at a distance. His translator produced a series of melodic tones that he hoped conveyed his peaceful intentions. "Are you alone here?" The child didn't respond but watched him warily. Elian noticed her gaze following his movements as he reached into his pack. Slowly, he removed a ration packet and opened it, revealing a nutrient bar. He took a small bite, then held it out to her. "Food," he said simply. After a moment's hesitation, hunger won over fear. She approached cautiously, reaching for the offering. Their fingers brushed momentarily, and Elian felt an unexpected tingle, like static electricity but somehow more deliberate. "I'm Elian," he said, tapping his chest. The child mimicked the gesture. "Neri," she whispered, the word sounding like wind through crystal chimes. As she ate, Elian wondered how she had survived here alone. The station appeared to have been abandoned months ago, yet she seemed relatively healthy despite her obvious hunger. "Where is everyone else?" he asked, but Neri only looked down, sadness washing over her features. Something inside Elian shifted. His mission was to chart the nebula, not rescue stranded alien children. Yet he couldn't bring himself to leave her here alone among the silent machines. "Would you like to come with me?" he asked, extending his hand. "I can help you find your people." Neri looked at his outstretched hand, then up at his face. Slowly, hesitantly, she placed her small purple hand in his. Neither could have known that this simple gesture of trust would soon echo across the stars. Guardian shadows. The first sign that something had changed came when Elian awoke to find the horizon surrounded by starships. They had appeared silently during his rest cycle, 7 vessels with sleek, organic lines that seemed to absorb rather than reflect the nebula's light. Each bore markings similar to those on the abandoned station. "We're being hailed," the AI reported, its tone suggesting it found the situation as improbable as Elian did. Before he could respond, Neri rushed to the viewport, her small face alight with recognition. "The Protectorate," she whispered, a complex mixture of relief and apprehension in her voice. The communication screen activated without Elian's command. A stern face appeared, humanoid but distinctly alien, with the same purple skin as Neri, though darker and marked with luminous patterns that suggested rank or lineage. "I am Commander Vex of the Celestian Protectorate," the figure announced, voice resonating with unexpected depth. "You have something that belongs to us." Elian felt Neri press against his side. "She's not a thing," he replied evenly. "And I found her abandoned." Something like surprise flickered across Vex's features. "The research outpost was attacked by Void Raiders. We believed all personnel lost, that the child survived." His gaze shifted to Neri. The daughter of scientist Lyra was thought dead. This changes matters considerably. Within hours, Elian found himself standing in a circular chamber aboard the Celestian command ship. surrounded by 12 purple-skinned figures who studied him with unreadable expressions. Neri had been taken elsewhere, despite her reluctance to leave Elian's side. "Your actions are unexpected," Commander Vex stated, circling Elian slowly. "Humans have not been known to show such consideration toward other species, particularly those unknown to them." "Perhaps you've met the wrong humans," Elian responded. A subtle ripple, something like amusement, passed through the assembled aliens. "Perhaps," Vex acknowledged. "Nevertheless, you protected one of our most precious children when you had no obligation to do so. The Celestian people acknowledge this debt." "There's no debt," Elian said. "Anyone would have—" "No," Vex interrupted. "They would not. And that is precisely why this council has made an unprecedented decision." He gestured toward a shimmering projection that appeared at the center of the room, a star map revealing a hidden world deep within the nebula's heart. "We invite you to Celestis, home of our people. No human has ever set foot there." The doors slid open, and Neri entered, now dressed in elaborate attire that marked her apparent status. She approached Elian with newfound confidence, though her eyes still held the same vulnerable trust from when they'd first met. "Will you come?" she asked softly. "I want to show you my home." Looking into her hopeful expression, Elian knew his mission parameters had just been irrevocably altered. Whatever consequences awaited him back at Earth Alliance headquarters seemed distant and unimportant compared to the mystery that had quite literally fallen into his hands. "Yes," he answered, surprising even himself with the certainty in his voice. "I'll come." As the Celestian fleet prepared to escort them deeper into the nebula, Elian couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter would reshape not only his future, but possibly the relationship between their species. What none of them realized was how prophetic that feeling would prove to be. Forbidden constellations, 7 years passed like stardust through an hourglass. Elian Reed, once a simple exploration pilot, now served as Earth Alliance's first official envoy to the Celestian Protectorate. His initial visit to their homeworld had opened diplomatic channels previously thought impossible, though relations remained cautious on both sides. The transport ship descended through Celestis's atmospheric shields, and Elian felt the familiar tightening in his chest that had nothing to do with the pressure changes. He was coming back, again, though this time with formal credentials and an official delegation trailing behind him. "Ambassador Reed," his assistant began, "the preliminary meeting with the Celestian Council is scheduled for—" "Tomorrow," Elian finished. "I know the protocol, Simmons." What his assistant didn't know, what no one in the Earth Alliance fully understood, was that these diplomatic missions held personal significance beyond political advancement. Every return to Celestis meant seeing her again. The landing platform hummed with activity as Celestian officials arranged themselves in ceremonial formation. At their center stood a slender figure whose presence commanded attention despite her stillness. No longer a child, Neri had grown into her role as daughter of the renowned scientist Lyra and cultural liaison to the humans. Their eyes met across the platform, professional masks momentarily slipping to reveal genuine joy at their reunion. "Envoy Reed," she greeted him formally, her voice carrying the musical quality all Celestians possessed, though his translator rendered it in crisp Earth standard. "Celestis welcomes you once more." "Liaison Neri," he responded with equal formality, though the corner of his mouth twitched upward. "The Alliance appreciates your continued hospitality." Only after the official reception, when the diplomatic corps had been shown to their quarters, did they find a moment alone in the botanical observatory. Celestian plants created natural privacy barriers, their bioluminescent fronds responding to emotional energy by growing more densely when intimate conversations were taking place. "I wasn't sure you'd come back this time," Neri admitted, her purple fingers tracing patterns on the viewing rail that separated them from the magnificent vista of the nebula below. Elian moved closer, close enough to feel the subtle warmth that radiated from her skin. "I requested this assignment specifically. Even after the Military Council's rejection of the Joint Defense Initiative, many believed it would end our diplomatic experiment. Some things are worth persisting for," he said quietly. Her gaze lifted to his, searching. "And what does Envoy Reed persist for, I wonder?" The moment stretched between them, years of carefully maintained professional distance, suddenly fragile as glass. Elian's hand moved to cover hers on the railing, fingers intertwining. "I think you know," he whispered. The plants around them pulsed with soft light as Neri leaned forward, her forehead touching his in the Celestian gesture of profound trust. "This cannot be simple for either of us," she murmured. "Nothing worthwhile ever is." Their first kiss was tentative, exploratory, a crossing of boundaries both physical and diplomatic. Neither spoke of what it might mean or the complications it would inevitably create. For now, it was enough to acknowledge what had been growing between them since that first moment on an abandoned outpost, when one simple act of kindness had set them on a course that neither could have predicted. What they couldn't know was that across the city, in the sealed chambers of the Celestian archives, ancient records were being unsealed. Records that would reveal their connection was far from coincidental. Eclipse of Hearts. The ancient archives of the Celestian repository glowed with ambient light as Neri traced her fingers over symbols etched millennia ago. She had been granted access only after weeks of petitioning the Elder Council, a privilege typically reserved for the highest-ranking scientists and historians. "These records predate the Sundering," she explained to Elian, who stood beside her with unconcealed wonder. "Before our people retreated from galactic affairs." The circular chamber projected holographic star charts that shifted and realigned as they moved through the space. Celestial bodies danced around them like fireflies, some familiar to Elian's trained eye, others completely unknown. "There," Neri said suddenly, pointing to a small blue sphere. "Terra, Earth." Elian stared at the ancient representation of his homeworld. "This record is at least 12,000 years old. Humans hadn't even developed written language then." "Yet our ancestors knew of yours," Neri replied, her voice hushed with significance. "And more than that, they visited." With practiced gestures, she expanded a section of the display. New symbols appeared, alongside genetic sequences that rotated in complex patterns. "The Celestian scientific expedition spent 3 generations studying early human development," she continued. "They found compatibility." Elian's breath caught as understanding dawned. "Genetic compatibility between our species." Neri nodded, her purple skin luminescent in the archive's glow. "More than that. Evidence of deliberate intervention, genetic modifications made to both populations." "Why would they do that?" "The records are fragmented, but they suggest a prophecy, a future where our species would need each other." Her eyes met his, vulnerable and searching. "Some on the council believe our meeting was predestined, Elian. Not chance, but design." The implications hung between them, both thrilling and terrifying. Their growing relationship, already complicated by politics, now carried the weight of ancient machinations. Later, in the privacy of Neri's dwelling, their conversation continued in whispers, despite the sound-dampening fields that ensured their privacy. "The military council is already suspicious of my frequent visits to the human compound," Neri said, her head resting against Elian's chest as they reclined on her meditation platform. "If they discover I've shared the archive findings..." Elian's fingers traced the constellation-like patterns on her shoulder, feeling her shiver at his touch. "And my superiors are pressuring me for access to Celestian defense technology. They don't understand that trust takes time." "Perhaps time is something we don't have," Neri murmured. Their lips met with increasing familiarity, yet each kiss still carried the thrill of discovery. The diplomatic barriers between them seemed to dissolve in these private moments, replaced by something more primal and honest. Elian's hands explored the smooth contours of her body, marveling at how alien yet familiar she felt against him. Neri's touch was both gentle and insistent, her natural bioluminescence intensifying with her arousal until they were bathed in a soft purple glow. "I never imagined feeling this way about someone not of my kind," she whispered against his ear. "Perhaps we are more alike than different," he responded, drawing her closer. Their intimacy deepened, transcending physical and cultural boundaries, a union that the ancient Celestians might have foreseen, but could never have truly understood. In those moments, they were neither human nor Celestian, but something new, something that existed in the space between worlds. Dawn found them entwined, reluctant to separate despite the day's obligations. As Elian prepared to return to the human compound before his absence was noticed, an urgent communication pierced their sanctuary. "Emergency council session convened," announced the automated system. "All diplomatic liaisons required immediately." The message continued, its mechanical tone belying the gravity of its content. "Unidentified vessels have breached the outer nebula perimeter." Hostile intent confirmed. Elian and Neri exchanged alarmed glances. Whatever force had arrived, it threatened the fragile peace they had worked to build, and possibly the secret they had just discovered. "The prophecy," Neri whispered. "It spoke of a time when two worlds would face darkness together." "Then, we face it together," Elian replied, squeezing her hand before duty forced them to separate. He to his people, she to hers. Neither said what both feared, that the very crisis that might prove their peoples needed each other could also tear them apart forever. Cosmic harmony. The Celestian war chamber had never hosted humans before. Now 5 stood among the purple-skinned council members, faces grim as they studied tactical projections showing the advancing enemy fleet. "The Void Collective," Commander Vex explained, his weathered features tense. "Ancient enemies we believed extinct. They consume worlds, strip them of resources and leave nothing behind." "How did they find Celestis?" Elian asked, standing closer to Neri than protocol strictly permitted. Scientist Lyra, Neri's mother, stepped forward, her eyes holding the same intelligence her daughter had inherited. "They followed you, Ambassador Reed. Not intentionally," she added, seeing his expression. "The Collective has technology that traces warp signatures. Your repeated journeys here created a path for them to follow." The accusation hung in the air, unspoken but palpable. 7 years of careful diplomacy threatened to collapse under the weight of fear. "Then we will help defend Celestis," Elian stated firmly. "The Alliance vessels in orbit carry experimental phase cannons. Combined with your shielding technology—" "Impossible," interrupted a senior military counselor. "Our defensive systems have never been integrated with foreign technology. The risk is less than the risk of extinction." Neri cut in, her voice carrying unexpected authority. All eyes turned to her as she activated a new projection. "I've studied both technologies extensively. Integration is possible. I've already created the theoretical framework." Murmurs rippled through the chamber. What Neri had done bordered on treason, sharing technological secrets across species boundaries, yet no one could deny the necessity of her actions now. In the tense hours that followed, humans and Celestians worked side by side, centuries of isolation giving way to desperate cooperation. Elian and Neri moved between groups, their established trust bridging cultural gaps that might otherwise have proven insurmountable. During a rare moment alone in a supply corridor, Elian pulled Neri into an alcove, his expression intense. "If this works, when this works," he corrected himself, "everything changes between our peoples." Neri's hands framed his face. "Everything has already changed." "The archives were right, Elian. Our species were always meant to find each other again." Their kiss was brief but fierce, a promise amid uncertainty. The battle, when it came, tested both civilizations to their limits. Celestian ships, elegant and swift, danced around the heavier Alliance vessels, their coordinated movements creating defensive patterns never before seen in either fleet. Integrated weapons fired in synchronized bursts, guided by Neri's adaptations and powered by both human and Celestian energy sources. From the Joint Command Center, Elian and Neri stood shoulder to shoulder, issuing orders that passed between the two fleets with increasing fluidity. When a collective destroyer broke through and targeted the Celestian capital, it was Earth Alliance ships that took the brunt of the attack, sacrificing shields to protect their allies. The moment marked a turning point, not just in the battle, but in history. Hours later, as the defeated collective vessels retreated into deep space, the combined fleet returned to Celestis orbit. Celebrations erupted across both human and Celestian ships, formal barriers dissolving in the face of shared victory and relief. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the wounded of both species and engineers began repairs, the Celestian High Council convened an unprecedented session. For the first time, humans were invited not as guests or diplomats, but as equals. Commander Vex, his uniform still bearing scorch marks from a damaged console, addressed the assembled representatives. Today we witnessed what the ancient records foretold. Two peoples standing as one against darkness. His gaze settled on Elian and Neri, who stood together at the center of the chamber. Some bonds transcend planetary boundaries. With formal ceremony, he announced the Council's unanimous decision: the establishment of the Celestian-Human Alliance, a permanent union of their civilizations. The first act of this new alliance would be a cultural exchange program, allowing citizens of both worlds to live and work among the other species. As the assembly dispersed, Elian led Neri to the Botanical Observatory, where they had shared their first kiss. The nebula beyond glowed with renewed brilliance, as if celebrating with them. "So," he said, taking both her hands in his, "where do we go from here?" Neri smiled, her purple features radiant with possibility. "Everywhere," she answered. "Together." Under the light of countless stars, they sealed this new beginning with an embrace that bridged worlds, proof that compassion shown to a lonely child could indeed reshape the cosmos. Their journey, once a solitary act of kindness, had become the foundation for harmony between stars. And in the ancient archives, the final prophecy glowed into life, its message clear at last. From separate skies they come, in shadow they meet, through fire they unite, and in love, galaxies find peace.